Good evening, everyone. So I'm just adjusting the board for live stream viewers. So hopefully the board is quite good now. How is the board? So we're going to have a look at Nezhmetdinov, very dynamic, aggressive player, and some say he's like Tal's trainer. Now, I'd like to indicate there's 3 very good introductory videos, biography videos about Nezhmetdinov, and I'm going to give you all the links. And JessicaFischerQueen has done these bio videos. So I'm just pasting them to you. So there's bio videos to check out about Nezhmetdinov on YouTube. So Nezhmetdinov, let's have a look at his game in 1954 against Lev Polugaevsky. So he's black, d4, and Nezhmetdinov played knight f6. Okay. Some of you are turning up now actually on the ChessBase server. Maybe I should delay this by a minute. Some of you are turning up in droves actually now. Okay, so c4, you haven't missed too much action yet from this game. And now c5, so inviting Benoni structure. d5 was played. And now d6 actually. So black hasn't yet committed to e6 and ed, leaving a weak d pawn potentially, typical of the Benoni. Instead, d6 is like a king's engine at the moment. Knight c3, g6 is played. Now e4, king's engine territory really. Bishop g7, now bishop d3. Now often this looks like an unusual kind of Petrosian type system with the early advance, and maybe bishop g5 later, and it's sort of positional. Black has been deprived of the c5 square because he's got that pawn, he's played that pawn there, but maybe e5 will be useful, and often against this structure e6 and ed is still going to be played later. Okay, so what happens in this game? White castles, knight ge2. So with that, the f pawn is still able to be used later. Maybe f4, e5. Maybe the bishop can reroute to prepare, castling, and then rook e1 for e5. Okay, so knight bd7, knight g3. And now black breaks open the centre. Also, another point, white hasn't castled yet, so h4, h5 might be on the cards, just for an h-file attack against the king here. So in this position, e6, if you're being attacked on the flank, sometimes it's good to counterattack in the centre as a sort of generalised rule. White takes on e6 now, and you see that after f takes, instead of 3 pawns here, 1 pawn's gone to the centre, so the king is slightly weakened. h4, so this looks kind of dangerous, undermining operation that black faces here. So what does Nezhmetdinov do? He plays actually knight e5 first, which threatens to grab the light square bishop. If black can grab the light square bishop, then maybe this guy can come alive later with d5 maybe. Try and open up scope for the bishop, maybe even at the cost of a pawn. But bishop e2 is played. And now we see a6. Typical counterplay in the king's engine is often making use of the Benko gambit, a delayed kind of Benko gambit b5, to try and undermine white's central control and generate counterplay for the pieces, across this diagonal on the b file. Okay, so h5. Is this really dangerous now? Queen e7. The queen can help defend the king side here. HG, bishop g5. And now the start of some queenside counterplay, b5. White takes. Nezhmetdinov takes back. White grabs the pawn. Now the bishop is a target here to knight f7. So hitting the bishop. Bishop's just protected. And now a counter strike in the centre. Because that knight's just gone to b5, sometimes that means that black can fight back on these two central squares. In this case, black fights back on the d5 square with d5. So at the moment e5 is covered, of course. E takes is played now. And finally, white castles. So he's switching plans. He's not committed to an h-file based attack. He stands here a pawn up. But black has active pieces. After bishop b7, bishop's potentially good on diagonal. Maybe d4, liberate it further. a4 is played. And now queen d7. Okay, queen d7. Which might support things like knight g4. Queen supporting g4. But also maybe later d4 and knight d5 is another possibility. So actually here white took on f6 and Nezhmetdinov recaptured, and now queen c2 hitting the g6 pawn as well as the c5 pawn actually. But after king g7, white didn't want to take the c5 pawn. Well, b2 would be on the fire anyway. Instead, white now launches an attack against the king. Bishop h5, quite ingenious. Because, you know, if takes, knight takes is winning the bishop, poor bishop. So the bishop can't be taken, and so what to do about g6? Okay. So queen g6, major threat. He plays actually the knight retreat, knight h8. But now look at this. The rook is swinging into the attack. Rook a3. So it's going to come potentially to the king side. This looks kind of dangerous for the black king now. Bishop e5. And now white tears into the black king position, leaving Nezhmetdinov with an almost naked king off the check. It looks pretty dangerous now. He plays actually not king h7, which might seem like a reasonable move. Remember, white's going to be playing rook h3. What he plays here is actually very clever. The king is potentially being carnivorous now with this next move, king h6. So you might wonder why. Well, you know, if rook h3 is going to happen, why would you want to move your king up here? You are actually attacking a knight. So white plays rook h3, perhaps a bit too casually. And here comes a surprise counter-attack from Nezhmetdinov. By the way, this game is featured in Jessica FischerQueen's videos. Those links I gave. That link I gave is one of 3 videos. I hope you do check out those 3 videos. So here the counter-attack begins. Queen takes h3. So it starts to solve not only black's king safety issues, just munching up the attacking units. This knight's not really helping in the attack over here. Quite distant. So it's really only the queen and rook. And look at these guys. They're all ready to pounce on the poor white king. Okay. Queen takes c5. And now rook f3. Just with the idea of rook takes h3, then maybe d4 and rook h1 if white's not careful. Coordinating, you know, a mate like that. Knight d4 blocking the d pawn, fearful perhaps of this bishop being extended in scope. Now rook takes h3 anyway. And now there are other numerous threats, like knight h4 to then take, and then knight f3 check. That's kind of a dangerous threat. Knight e2 is played, and now Nezhmetdinov is not afraid to play knight f4 here. I think one of the reasons is, if we look tactically what's going on, if knight g3 check, actually there's an interesting idea here. Maybe take bishop d4 check. So if queen takes, there'll be knight e2 check. That'll be winning easily. So knight g3 is not on the cards, I think, because of that. So instead, white took on f4. After bishop takes f4, is faced with a slaughter. Rook g8, mating, because the rooks are like covering all exits. King g2 to try and threaten the rook, and maybe try and escape. But here Nezhmetdinov simply attacks the queen, and here white resigned. And white resigned really because the queen is actually protecting c8. So if the queen moves to here, what Nezhmetdinov would have done here is just simply play check, forcing king takes, and now we have bishop c8 check, and that's mating. That's all he needs. The two bishops rather, and the rook. That'll be mating. So if we have a look at that game in overview and summary, it looked very dangerous for Nezhmetdinov's king. In this king's Indian line, sometimes it's unusual for white to want to play d takes e6. Usually white leaves black to take, and then you can either take with the c pawn or e pawn. That's the usual case. But this has sometimes been played by players with the white pieces, because it does actually fracture black's king's position. So it's been softened up already, and white's use of the a rook is also really potentially dangerous in this game. So despite all this, an aggressive counterattack was still mustered up in this position, with the king slightly weakened. So a4 is not just about the passed a pawn, but also potentially about slaughtering the king here, with only that pawn remaining for the king's shelter. So queen d7 took, getting rid of the defender. On queen c2, he's putting pressure on g6. And now an ingenious looking move, bishop h5. Very passive looking knight retreat right on the edge of the board. The worst place for a knight, but it's needed here to support g6. Now the rook swings in for the attack. So the clever bit here is highlighted or implied. After bishop takes g6, sacrificing one bishop, the king was ready for this queen sack. So king h6, brilliant idea. Sack the queen, you get 3 pieces for it, and then whip up a counter attack. So that's what happened, a queen counter sacrifice. And white's not in a position really to defend his king, wasn't prepared to defend in this game. So knight g3 answerable by rook g3 here. So white's actually the one who's defenseless now in this position. So rook c8, final move, end of game. Okay, hope you got something from that game. Shall we have a look? We'll have a look at another game now. So as white, let's have a look at his game against Paoli in 1954. So he really does smash up Sicilian defences quite a lot, this Nezhmetdinov. So let's see what he did here. After e4, c5, what system of choice did he use? Open Sicilian, plays d4. Okay, so Najdorf. Now bishop g5, Victor Rosa attack. But now a lot of people might play f4. This is an alternative, queen f3. Does queen f3 look awkward? You know, what if knight d7 to e5 to try and attack the queen? Well, that has to be factored in when playing queen f3. For the moment, bishop e7, the queen's safe for the moment. White castles queenside. Queen c7. And actually now, a pigeonhole is going to be made for the queen to drop back if needed. Rook g1 implies the g-pawn is going to be moved forward, giving the queen a retreat square to g2 if needed. So say this kind of thing, you can retreat your queen. So bishop d7, g4. Okay. So knight c6, and not only threatening to exchange, but also knight e5. Bishop e3. Now black plays h6 to try and put the brakes on this attack. h4. Now black tries to sort of counter on the queen side against white's king without committing the king to the slaughterhouse, what it looks like, casting right into it. Leaves the king in the centre. g5. So takes, and now knight e5, kicking that queen to its pigeonhole square, g2. Look at the bishop actually, it's quite interesting, still at home. Ready to take something on c4 in one go. Knight g8. Okay, now f4, and white's got this pawn chain to kind of undermine with either g6 or f5, but is he getting to the king? That's the question. Knight c4, he takes immediately, and now f5, undermining e6 a little bit. Okay, so the king's still in the centre, dangerous. b5. Note the queen on g2 is not only on the g file, but it's also defending c2 at the moment. King b1. Now b4, and now the first sign of brilliancy in this game. White ignores the threat to the knight on c3, uses it for time gain to play just g6, sacrificing a knight. Wants to rip into the black king position and use g6. Remember, he's got a pawn on f5. It wasn't just for undermining, actually it was to support queen g6s as well. Black is not too keen to take the knight here. He actually attacks the other one. Two knights are being attacked. Now, one knight is forcibly offered with b3, hitting that queen, asking, take the knight on c3, take it. So it's taken. G takes f7 check. After king d8, okay, the simple move to regain material would be fg, but, you know, that's not really as strong as this continuation, I think. White takes on g7. He wants to try and queen this pawn potentially. Take this rook, queen this pawn. So black munches the other knight with e takes d4. Two knights. With that also, there's now a threat of queen takes c2. Remember, the rook and queen are a battery on the c-file. So what does Nezhmetdinov do here? He invites queen c2 as well. He plays bishop takes d4. So queen takes c2 is invited. It's taken. King a1, but how does black proceed now? White's still got this menacing like pressure now on all these pieces. Rook h2, threatening a mate in one. Whoa, is this getting to be danger level? Threatened with a mate in one. White has to react very, very quickly here and precisely. And he does so. He plays bishop b6 check. Okay. After rook c7. Now, the pawn plays a pivotal role for e8 control, because now the queen is sacrificed with queen takes g8. Sorry, not sacrificed, pardon me. The queen is going to make the black king, because if bishop e8, queen takes e8. So bishop e8, or just take it like that. So that was it. After bishop b6 check, you know, black resigned. So let's have a look at that game in overview and summary. So we don't have to move our f pawn. We can just play queen f3 for those wanting a system against the Sicilian. Queen f3, then castle queenside, and rook g1. Okay, so the g-pawn moves. Bishop comes back now to unravel, to enable g5 to happen. So h4. So we saw two knight sacrifices in this game, which really accelerated White's own attack. So he allows first his knight on c3 to be taken, but it's not. But now he forces it to be taken. So one knight down, two knights down, invites queen takes c2 check, two knights down, faced with mate, but now comes the execution with bishop b6 check. So queen takes g8 is end of game. I hope that's an interesting one as well for the attacking player. Okay, let's move on to another game. So, believe it or not, Nezhmetdinov has actually played the great Boris Spassky in the USSR Championship, Moscow, 1957. So where all the big guns are. So Boris Spassky, 1957. He was white against Spassky. So e4 was played, and we have a Sicilian defense. Okay, so knight f3, knight c6, but now not the open Sicilian, but bishop b5, Rosalimo system of attack. Boris Spassky reacts with g6, which is one of the strongest moves in the position, and White tries to sort of get play it as sort of like a Roy Lopez. So what he does now is play for c3 and d4. So castles, bishop g7, and he plays c3 now. So he's in no rush to take on c6. Knight f6, queen e2. After castles e5, White has a solid position, and the battle really, about the central squares here with this c3 d4. White's trying to control the central squares. So d4, knight c7, kicking the bishop somewhere. Actually just goes back as though it's a Roy Lopez. It might go back to c2. Black takes on d4 now and plays d5. So black has a foothold in the centre and threatens to pin the knight, which would be nasty. So h3 stopping the pin. Rook b8, and that bishop comes back to c2. So the king side's being eyed actually. Look at these bishops. It's being kind of eyed by the bishops. b6 though, and it looks as though White has some issues to deal with now. Bishop a6 is on the cards because the knight's supporting bishop a6. So bishop d2 inviting bishop a6 in the exchange of the light square bishops. So bishop d3, not minding the exchange with light square bishops. So is White's position being tamed here? Queen d7, is black solid? Well, the knight can come to c3 now. After knight b4, the queen drops back, not minding any knight c2. That's only a temporary threat. Rook bc8, and now the knight's kicked back. And now b4, gaining a bit of space on the queen side. Boris puts more pressure on d4 with knight e6. Queen d3, supporting the centre. And now black decides to play actively with f6, blasting the f file open. Is this going to be dangerous for White? E takes, bishop takes. Now knight e2, which kind of reinforces d4, but potentially also maybe the knight's going to come over here or over here. And also remember, White's got the e file now to play with. After e takes, he's got the semi-open e file potential. Bishop g7. Rook comes to c1 first. And now a bit of space gain. Black actually plays a5, inviting b5. Exchange of rooks occurs. And now knight f4. So clearing out the e file. It's becoming riper for rook e1 soon. Rook c4. White takes on e6 and now plays rook e1. Queen d6. Now g3 as though maybe bishop f4. And then maybe bishop e5. Try and weaken the king. You know, get to these dark squares. So knight d7, bishop f4. Kicking the queen again. And actually winning a pawn actually. So was that a blunder by Boris? Possibly. He's just blundered his e7 pawn. It's gone after that. Queen f6. I think that's a major blunder. But where else could the queen go? This is actually quite embarrassing. So maybe knight d7 doesn't give the queen an escape route back. So bishop f4 forces queen f6. So white's just winning e7 now. That's quite a major pawn to win here. Knight f6. After queen e2, there's a menacing threat now of queen e6 check and rook f7. And if knight e4, then we have rook takes e4 actually, because of queen takes e4. So how does black parry this queen e6? Well, in fact, after h6, black resigned. I think he must see that he's lost here. 'Cause check. Say the king moves there. I think rook f7, just winning the f6 bishop. So the Boris Spassky goes down in this game, 1957 to Nezhmetdinov. Let's have a look at that again in overview and summary. So the Rosalimo system of attack, where black seems to be doing okay after the exchange of light square bishops, but I know slightly weakening his king in the e file here, and just one kind of small mistake, really. Well, big mistake, knight d7. Maybe Boris wasn't at the peak of his powers to play knight d7 here. Does seem to just basically forcefully lose the e pawn, unfortunately for black, on the bishop f4. Queen's forced to move to f6. He's losing the e pawn. And very shortly now the game, soon after. So he resigned here. Okay. So I hope you got something from that game. Any questions so far from anyone about anything? I've got another 2 games to check out. But is there anything anyone wants to say about Nezhmetdinov? Apparently he did like train Tal for quite a bit. So we're good to go to the next game, yeah? We'll go to the next game. Okay. Talking of Mikhail Tal, here is a game against the great Mikhail Tal. So Baku 1961. Tal wasn't so bad in 1961. E4 and Tal plays C5. Tal actually got really brutalized in this game. It's quite bad. It was an open Sicilian and Scheveningen pawn center without A6. Note, A6 hasn't been played, so maybe you might think, well, there's options like bishop e5 check which don't usually exist, but bishop e2 was played. Knight bd7, and white's play looks innocuous at the moment, relatively. After f4, queen c7, First surprise move of the game though now. White plays hyper aggressively, turns into a monster from here. He plays g4. So although his king's there, he's gonna dislodge that knight away from the center and try and arrange a big attack. So Tal reacts by just trying the standard plan to put pressure across the diagonal in the center. b5. So white plays a3, putting a break on b4. Bishop b7, now bishop f3. So is white's centre quite solid? Even more pressure on e4, protecting e4. Now playing e5, attacking the knight on d4. It can occupy f5 here, which it does. And after g6, Nezhmetdinov just ignores the attack on the knight. He just plays f takes e. His king's still stuck in the centre at the moment. It's quite dangerous for the king. Something like takes would backfire, perhaps. So the problem is now knight h6 stops black from ever casting. King's kind of trapped because of this knight h6. So Tal tries to exploit white's weakened dark squares. He plays knight e6, so these two dark squares are a bit vulnerable. Knight d4 attacking the queen, for example. But bishop g2 was calmly played, and there's pressure on f6. And if knight d4, maybe queen f2 now, and then maybe bishop e3 if bishop c5 is a threat. So bishop g7, and now the start of brilliancy. Rook takes f6, exchange sack to start off with. Knight d5, huge knight on d5. Black dare not take because attacking the knight, and then maybe d6 is on the cards. And if knight d4 there, then there's queen f2 hitting f6. Okay, so queen d8 instead, but queen f2 anyway. So f6 is on here. What does black do? He blocks the f file with knight f4. White takes. And now tries to open up the position more with e5. Black takes. And now rook e1. Remember, the black king is trapped. Can't castle because the knight stopping castling. f6. And now here is a beauty, actually, to really smash open black's king. So trying to rip open the e file. Knight takes f6 check against Tal. So after queen f6, now the stunning queen d4, exploiting that pin. Remember also this bishop's in pre, but queen d4 is possibly the strongest move in the position, because it's threatening like rook takes e5 check and then another rook move to win the queen potentially. So king f8, rook takes e5, and now there's a threat actually of rook f5, because if takes then there's queen f6. So queen d8, but rook f5 check anyway, because look, the queen's now on h8. Takes, queen takes h8. The king's getting mowed down now. G takes, f5 check. And here, the great Tal resigned. He resigned here. Did I say resign? Yes, it's not mate. I'm just checking to make sure it's not mate. The king can go to d6, but that's shielding kind of file. Now, in this position, I think white's winning easily with, say, queen takes b7, among other things. But also, for example, queen... Well, I think queen takes b7 is a simple-looking win, just material up. So Tal was shredded in this game. Let's have a look in overview and summary. Oh, pardon me, Lord Osiris, thank you for speaking up. Sorry, there's also knight f7, forking the king and queen. That would be quite bad as well. That's not a bad alternative. Thank you. Someone's awake watching this. Oh dear. So yeah, Tal resigned. He didn't want that humiliation of the knight fork. So let's have a look in this game in overview and summary. So Tal on the receiving end here. So open Sicilian. With a very early G4. So that's kind of scary, isn't it? G4. I think Fischer's played like this way against a dragon setup once against someone with an early G4. Can be quite dangerous. B5, A3. Okay, so securing the centre. But now heading for the first knight sacrifice offering. So F takes E5, it's not taken. But the knight's very useful now to stop black castling. So bishop G7. Exchange sack time. Knight D5. Queen's very good on F2 here. Now this opening of the centre. And yet another exchange sacrifice will follow. Sorry, pardon me, not an exchange sack, a piece sacrifice will follow. Knight takes F6. So Queen D4, and the black king really is stuck in the centre, in real trouble now, after Rook takes E5. Big threats. What to do about them? If King G7, by the way, there's Rook E7 check, because the Queen will be pinned. So Rook F5 check really starts the King chase, and it's all over really now. Okay, so after G takes F. So another attacking game. I hope you're getting some inspiration from these games. Okay, I've got another one to go over. Right, let's load it up. This time against Lev Polugaevsky. So Nezhmetdinov was black here. So as black, he played this system with D6 and a quick E5. White plays E4, allowing taking on D4. Tempo gain, and now G6. Already black looks okay, but does white have good control over the D5 square? That could be one concession about this positioning. Bishop B2, castles bishop D3. Now after knight G4, look at the dark squares. I like black's dark square control and the potential for the queen to come over. And in fact, this next move invites the queen to come in, positively invites the queen to come in very aggressively on H4. So already threatening nasty threats, and white can't castle, which has been mated. So knight G3, knight G E5, and now white castles. But we get here an aggressive pawn storm now, F5. So there's a problem with F4, it's a bit loosening. Knight G4 would be threatening mates, and if H3 and Queen G3. So F4 doesn't seem to be on the cards here. So instead white plays passively, and now bishop H6 hitting the queen, and we've got an accelerated pawn storm coming up. So G5, like a king's engine, classic pawn storm. G4, already biting into white's pawn chain. G3, black takes, queen H3. Now after F4, Nezhmetdinov leaves the knight to be taken. He plays bishop E6. I have a video, a dedicated video for this particular game. I think actually this is not much to see here, I think, because of bishop E3 check. Ouch. So the knight actually can't be taken. So bishop C2. And now rook F7, just casually sort of potentially building up pressure. King F2, the king makes a run for it. check. Now bishop takes d5. Takes. And now knight b4, hitting the bishop on c2, tying the white queen a little bit. But white now attacks Nezhmetdinov's queen. And the funny thing here is that a beautiful move now from Nezhmetdinov, just offering his queen. He just plays rook takes f4. He wants to unveil a discovered double check, the stuff of our dreams, with this queen sack. So the queen is taken, now discovered double check. The king must move to d4, in fact, is the only move. Bishop g7, so we have a king hunt with black having offered the queen. So how does this work? So after a4, c5 check. Takes, and again now there's a threat, horrible threat of c5, kind of mating. So bishop d3 shields the rook, so giving the king c3, but takes on d3 with check, and we've got bishop over here, so it's discovered check. After king c4, d5 check, takes, cd check. King hunt continues, rook b8, and now knight c6, and white resigns here. He's faced with mate next move. If he moves his king, then it'll be mate. So a spectacular queen sack there, leading to a king hunt, a successful king hunt. I hope you enjoyed that one. Let's have a look in overview and summary at that one. So e5. Black doesn't mind d takes e. This can be quite solid for black with c6 and king c7 later this system. So white played instead e4. So black has nice dark square play here after knight g4, it seems, and especially nice after queen h4. It's a promising position already. So after f5, it looks as though white's king is a bit vulnerable here, with just the knight on g3, which can be subject to tempo gain now because of f4. So f3 and now bishop h6, driving the queen away from that sensitive diagonal. f4, blocking in the bishop but getting on with the pawn storm. Here, by the way, not minding about the c7 pawn, that's trivial in the scheme of things because of g takes and things like bishop h3. So g3, and the attack continues pretty soon. So king f2, sneaking idea of rook h1 to try and win the black queen. The black queen is otherwise trapped anyway. So check. And now, as though Nezhmetdinov might have blundered, but no, it's not blunder. It's not winning the queen as much as the queen is being sacrificed. So rook takes f4, queen sack for this double check, drawing the king out. So lots of horrible threats now. I've got detailed analysis of this game on my YouTube channel. If you do a search on YouTube for Polugaevsky and Nezhmetdinov, if you would like to see a lot more of the variations. But it's a kind of work of art, this game, because of the queen sack. Works out very nicely for this neat king hunt, as we see here. Okay, so that was a small selection of Nezhmetdinov games, which I hope you enjoyed. Any questions, or shall we call it the end for this week here? I've covered these 5 games a bit quicker than normal, perhaps less questions than normal. Okay, but Hope you enjoyed it and took something from it. If there's no other questions, I'll see everyone next week at this time. Okay. There will be a YouTube video for this session uploaded where you can still add comments and questions later. So check out YouTube.com Kingscrusher. So YouTube.com Kingscrusher for the video which I'll upload. But I do have other Nezhmetdinov videos as well, including a classic video, my all-time best rated video. If you do a YouTube search for positional Queen Sacrifice Kingscrusher, you'll find one of my top videos is another game not covered in this one, but it's a positional Queen Sacrifice with Queen takes. Sorry, I don't want to spoil it for you, but check out that video as well. So I've done quite a few Nezhmetdinov games with greater detail on my YouTube channel, so check that out. Otherwise, okay, thank you. See you next week. Thanks very much.